Hi, I'm Jim Taylor. Welcome to In Favor Resources and this video series we're doing called The God-Given Power of Music. Now this is video number 7. It's kind of got some extras on it, things that I thought were important enough to share, but not so much that I wanted to spend an entire video on any of the 3 of them. So this is a free one. You didn't pay for this. This is a bonus video, but you will need a handout. So go to infavorresources.com and download the handout for video number 7 in the series, The God-Given Power of Music. There are 3 important thoughts, 3 ideas, 3 concepts I want to get across in this video. The first one is this. I'd like to leave you with the thought that music has no boundaries. That's the first set of blanks on your handout. Music has no boundaries. In 1 Samuel 18, after David had killed Goliath and Israel had routed the Philistines and the victorious army was coming home, we are told that, these are the verses on your sheet, the women came out from all the towns of Israel to meet King Saul with singing and dancing, with joyful songs and with timbrels and lyres. And as they danced, they sang, Saul has slain his thousands and David his tens of thousands. Now they sang that song to King Saul as he came home from the battle. Now, if you remember the story, you remember that Saul was angry and became very jealous when he heard them credit David with more military victories and prowess than he had. He was the king. He felt like he deserved that honor and that glory. So as David's popularity grew, so did Saul's hatred for David, and he was insanely jealous and sometimes murderously violent, and he repeatedly tried to kill David. So David had to flee from Saul to save his own life. He actually had to leave the country. He left Israel and went down to the Philistia, where the Philistines lived, in Gath. When King Achish welcomed him there, 1 Samuel 21 on your handout, the concerned servants of Achish said to him, wait a minute here, hold on. Isn't this David, the king of the land? Isn't he the one they sang about in their dances? Saul has slain his thousands and David his tens of thousands. It's notable the same song that was being sung in Israel about David was also being sung in Philistia about David. They knew about David, and they knew the song about him. In fact, they probably knew about David through the song that they were singing. Now, David went to live in a cave at one point and several desert places, but eventually he returned to Gath. And when the Philistines had gathered their forces to go against Israel, Achish commanded David to fight on their side against Israel, against his countrymen. Well, some of the Philistine commanders were angry. This is 1 Samuel 29. They were angry with Achish and said to him, send the man back. He must not go with us into battle, or he will turn against us during the fighting. That was a safe assumption, I think. Isn't this the David they sang about in their dances? Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. Once again, David's victory song, the song of his triumph, was on the lips of Israel's enemies. They knew the words to the song. It boggles the mind. Here's a song that topped the charts in Israel, running number 1, and it's in the top 40 in Philistia, the country of their enemies. This is amazing. Even God's enemies were singing of David's prowess in battle. They just couldn't get this song out of their mind. Have you ever had that experience where your friend or your spouse says, why do you keep humming that? And you're thinking, why am I humming that or whistling that or singing that? It's because you heard it on the elevator or you heard it on the radio on the way home from work or something like that, and you can't get it out of your mind, regardless of what a silly song it is. That was the case between Israel and Philistia concerning the song of David's triumph. We don't know how catchy the tune would have been. It must have been very catchy, but the meter of the chant really lends itself to easy repetition. I mean, in English, Saul has slain his thousands and David his tens of thousands. Saul has slain his thousands and David his tens of thousands. It's very easy, it's very smooth, it's very good. In Hebrew, it's the same way. Hika Shaul ba'elfo wa Dawid ba'revota. Hika Shaul ba'elfo wa Dawid ba'revota. It's very easy to chant, very easy to memorize, very easy to learn, easy to dance to. If this premiered on American Bandstand, we'd all be saying, well, Dick, it's got a nice beat, I can dance to it, I give it a 95. The power of music is such that it established David's reputation for bravery and might in battle. This song spread his reputation beyond the borders of his country. It went international. It went before him, and it paved the way. It opened doors for him to be successful. And people who had never met him recognized his name because they were singing about him. Music may know some boundaries, folks, but I don't know what they are. That's the first thought. Music knows no boundaries. Its power goes beyond geographical or national boundaries. Here's the second important thought for you to take with you. Music can also be misused. That's the second blank. Music can be misused, just like all of God's good gifts to mankind. These now are the negative examples. These are the examples of how mankind can abuse a wonderful gift from God. Now, in the Bible, music appears, and these are all already printed out for you on your handout. It appears in drinking songs and is used by drunkards. Psalm 69 says, "Those who sit at the gate mock me, and I am the song of drunkards." Somehow I don't think God's getting the glory from that song. Prostitute used music for seduction. Isaiah 23. "At that time, Tyre will be forgotten for 70 years, the span of a king's life. But at the end of those 70 years, it will happen to Tyre as in the song of the prostitute. Take up a harp, walk through the city, you forgotten prostitute. Play the harp well, sing many a song, so that you will be remembered." This is why taverns and bars and nightclubs and gentlemen's clubs have music playing constantly, I think. In Mark chapter 6, I believe that situation where the very young girl was dancing sensuously and provocatively for King Herod, so much so that he was completely caught up in the dance. He was mesmerized by this young girl, so much so that he made the foolish decision to kill John the Baptist for her, technically for her mother, but the girl asked him. He immediately regretted that decision, but it was too late. He had made his promise. And I believe if the girl dancing like that to capture the attention of every man in the room and just draw them in, there must have been some alluring music playing at the same time. Music can also be demanded by mockers, that it can be used by bullies. In Psalm 137, the Israelites have been exiled from their homeland and are now in Babylon, where they don't want to be. "By the rivers of Babylon we sat and wept when we remembered Zion. There on the poplars we hung our harps, for there our captors asked us for songs." They wanted entertainment. They wanted us to sing and dance for them. Our tormentors demanded songs of joy. They said, "Come on, sing us one of the songs of Zion." But the writer of the Psalm said there was no joy for us there. How can we sing the songs of the Lord while we are in a foreign land? Music is also used in idol worship, as in the famous story in Daniel chapter 3, when King Nebuchadnezzar set up this huge image, a great giant image, and he demanded, without exception, that when they heard the music, everyone had to bow down and worship. And everyone did. As you see, and it's all printed out on your sheet there, everyone did except for 3 very brave young men. And sometimes our music can be rejected because of our own hypocrisy, as in Amos 5, where God says, I despise your religious festivals. Your assemblies are a stench to me. Even though you bring me burnt offerings and grain offerings, I will not accept them. Though you bring choice fellowship offerings, I will have no regard for them. These are all things that God commanded them to do. And now he's saying, I don't want them. Not from you. He says, away with the noise of your songs. I will not listen to the music of your harps. But if you really want to please me, God says, let justice roll on like a river and righteousness like a never-failing stream. This is an inventory of ignominy. It's a directory of disgrace. The enemy cannot create things. And so he can, and he does, corrupt pervert, misuse the good things that God has given us, including this powerful, powerful gift of music. Satan will turn this for his own evil means and purposes. Second thought is music can be misused. And the third and sobering point, the absence of music, this is the last set of blanks on your handout, the absence of music is a sign of God's judgment. The absence of music can be a sign of God's judgment. Ezekiel 26, God says, I will put an end to your noisy songs, and the music of your harps will be heard no more. Why won't you hear it any longer? God says, because I'm putting an end to it. In Revelation 18, when God describes the downfall of Babylon, he says, the music of harpists and musicians, pipers and trumpeters will never be heard in you again. What a punishment. No worker of any trade will ever be found in you again. The sound of a millstone will never be heard in you again. The light of a lamp will never shine in you again. The voice of bridegroom and bride will never be heard in you again. What a tremendous punishment for Babylon. And also, you can reread many of the passages that I have listed there on your handout. These are all passages we looked at in other contexts through this series of videos, and they all did the same thing. They explained to us and pictured for us what usually happened in a situation by telling us what was missing. And in most of these cases, these things were missing because of God's judgment. Now notice, this is not to be confused with songs that are sung in sadness, or music that is given for mourning, death, or something that's quiet and sad. We talked about that in video number 1, music and our emotions, when we talked about music at funerals and times of grief. Now what we're talking about here is a silence that reflects the judgment of God. This is why I said at the close of the last video, you should never want to live in a nation or a town or even a home where there is no music. As Jane Austen said in the quote at the top of your sheet there, without music, life would be a blank to me. This is a woman who filled many blank pages with amazing and compelling words and stories that we still read today. But she said it would all be a blank if I didn't have music as my inspiration. One of the most tragic punishments God can level on us here on earth is to silence the music. With sounds of worship, joy, and celebration being absent, it probably means that God is absent too. Well, check out, please, our other teaching videos, resources, and things at In Favor, and the information is printed there at the bottom of your handout. And just for follow-up, just a couple of questions and statements here. Thank you so much for viewing these videos with us. And I just trust that we're all a little more knowledgeable about the wonder and the delight of this amazing gift from God. I pray that our days are a little bit brighter when we think about music, that our steps are a little bit lighter when we're singing, and that our nights are more enjoyable as we listen to music or participate in it. I'm suggesting as just a practical assignment that you, over the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, that you make a note, mental or otherwise, whenever music enters your life. If you're singing it or you're playing it or you're hearing it, ask yourself, where's it coming from? How is it blessing you? How are you using it to bless God? Is it reminding you of anyone or anything? Is it teaching you something? How might God be using this music to help you make your life more like Jesus? And I want to leave you, finally, this really is finally, with the lyrics to a song by Chris Tomlin and Louis Giglio. We stand and lift up our hands, for the joy of the Lord is our strength. We bow down and worship him now. How great, how awesome is he. And together we sing. Everyone sing. Holy is the Lord God Almighty. The whole earth is filled with his glory. It's rising up all around. It's the anthem of the Lord's renown. It's the God-given power of music. I encourage you to join in God's song this week.